You know how great your house looks and smells when it's just been cleaned? So fresh. And somehow, a clean house makes your head feel fresher too. With a housekeeper from Care, you can reset your house and your head as often as you like for less than you think. Find a great housekeeper, set a schedule that works for you, and check cleaning off your to-do list so you can put your mind to other, more fun things. Get the housekeeping help you need at Care.com.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you on this Friday morning, day one of camp for the Gamecocks. Just talked to Colin a little bit ago. Sounds like you guys got to see some good stuff this morning.
Got to see some things. Day one. It was exciting. Lots of different storylines on this team. Wes, on the spot. Wes has been putting me on the spot a lot lately.
Okay.
So it's time for payback.
Here we go.
Wes, this isn't too hard. Biggest takeaway from day one. Go.
Ooh. Okay. I'll go back a little bit to Media Day as well. And this is something we've talked about, you know, maybe even more than we should have. But I think one of the biggest storylines for this entire team is obviously going to be offensive line play, but how does it get structured? And, you know, every time Beamer has been asked in the past and every time Dow Loggins has been asked, they have really shied away from talking about what left tackle looks like, to a lesser extent what right tackle is going to look like. And so we're starting to get a little bit of a feel for exactly how that's going to play out. Now, they're going to have to earn it, but at least right now, so the plan is essentially for South Carolina to rep a bunch of guys at left and right tackle, cross-train them. Whoever the best two are going to be the starters. And whether that means you're at left tackle right now, if the top two tackles are both at left tackle, they're going to move one of them to right tackle. And so we've already seen that sort of happen based on what we saw in the spring compared to now. So Ja'Kai Moore, as we anticipated, but really never was completely confirmed.
Yeah.
You know, we entirely anticipated it, but it is now official. Ja'Kai Moore playing left tackle. Now, the interesting thing there, with his move to left tackle and even with Jalen Nichols being out at left tackle, we learned this yesterday. Sidney Fugar, who is the former transfer, he transferred in prior to the spring, went through spring practice, played left tackle. He is now working at right tackle. And as we said yesterday and then confirmed today at practice, he is actually working with the ones at right tackle. So you're starting to get a little bit of clarity. Now, is there going to be some jockeying for position there? Of course, but it is at least noteworthy. Day one, snap one, first time out there. That's where things stand at those two, obviously, all-important positions.
And moving to the interior, Colin noted that Marky Anderson and Trevon Ball are practicing at guard with the potential to get a little bit of looks at center as well.
Yep, that's right. And Wes, I would actually co-sign exactly what you're saying, because I think...
So I gave a good answer?
It was a great answer, because I think that was probably the biggest question that could be answered on day one. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it could change. From what I heard yesterday, the staff is probably not going to fully, or there's a possibility the staff may not settle on, here's our 5, here's our top 8, here's our rotation, until like the second scrimmage, which is on August 19th. Day of the Gamecock Central preseason kickoff party, by the way. So could it be before that? Certainly. And probably a couple of those spots at least are kind of, you go into it thinking those are locked in. But you can't answer a question on day one of practice of like a big picture item like how well can this team run the ball? How well can they stop the run? How good what's the upside of the defense? Like, you can't answer those things on day one. But in terms of position battles, this was one that was a question that you at least now are starting to get at least the opening sense of. So, yeah, Wes, you kind of nailed what the anticipated depth chart was going to be. Some other things on the O-line that I think we learned from yesterday and today. I think we knew that South Carolina likes to cross-train guys. Mm-hmm. You like for guys to have a couple spots they can play ideally. But I learned on a more firm kind of basis that Lonnie Teasley, every guy has at least, he's expected to be able to play 2 spots. So when you have a left tackle, he's expected to play right. And so you start thinking, as Wes mentioned, Sidney Fugar, spring, he's left tackle. Well, now he's right, and he's the number 1 guy. Will that hold? I don't know. Kason Henry played last year as a true freshman. He was playing at left tackle. He could play right or left now. Interior guys, Marky Anderson, the question for him was, and he'll play this year as a true freshman, the question is how much. It's kind of, well, where will he factor in? Because he has a skill set where he could play all 5 spots. It seems like they've honed in on him being a guard, and he also learned some center this summer as well.
So I think the interior spots, I don't want to say anything is like solidified, because then you kind of get that pushback from like a coach, like, oh, everybody's competing. But in terms of radio, internet people saying it, I think you can pretty much project that Gargiulo, Vershawn Lee, and Trey Jones are kind of your starters inside. Like, put it like this, it would be an upset if one of those 3 guys gets beat out. Now, another thing Lonnie Teasley told me is that he loves the fact that Vershawn Lee and Nick Gargiulo give him some real versatility in that he feels really comfortable moving them around as well. So if a guy were to go down, they've played enough ball. Obviously, for Nick, it wasn't here, but he's a smart dude, has played 4 years of football. He feels comfortable enough saying, look, if we got to slide you somewhere else, I can do that. And maybe that allows me not to put so much on a young guy. These young guys obviously are playing their second spot as well, but maybe you want them to focus a little bit more on one spot. And so Marky Anderson, he played some tackle, like we said, in the spring. He played a lot of left guard in the spring. Actually slated to kind of start preseason at right guard. Now, he's going to play both guard spots, going to rep some at center too, but kind of slots in at right guard. Like y'all said, Trevon Ball. They're going to give all these freshmen, I get the impression all the freshmen are going to get a chance to show what they can do. But I think not to sort of start cutting guys out of this conversation too early, but it just feels like Marky Anderson, Trevon Ball, and then Tree Babalade are the 3 freshmen to really keep an eye on and Tree getting his first look at left tackle. Chris, I did not, so I knew this would be the case. I knew it was going to be hard. My projected depth chart did not nail the second team, but I knew that was going to be very hard to do at this point. But Tree out there with the twos, at least today, at left tackle, right?
And even in that what appeared to be the twos, a couple different configurations of it. Like one of them, Mark Anderson wasn't even out there. Another one, he's at right guard.
Was Tree at left tackle for both of those configurations?
Yes, I believe he was.
Yeah. I had put Jackson Hughes, the transfer, second, and then Tree. Again, it's all conversation.
I don't even know if you could say you didn't nail it. I mean, you nailed the first team, and I think that's for day one. That's a better indicator. I don't think a day one, very first time they line up in a second team depth chart, non-depth chart, I don't think, you can really penalize yourself for that because, I mean, even there, they played a couple different combinations, and it could be different tomorrow. They might have put it all in a hat, in terms of day one. But Jackson Hughes...
They want you to think that.
Yeah, exactly. Jackson Hughes is in the mix, though, the Charlotte transfer. I get the sense that he's at least, in that conversation there. Jatavius Shivers is the other of the freshman offensive linemen. We got to eyeball him today. A good-looking kid, and he'll be right tackle, left tackle. But I agree with you. Seems like those other three freshmen probably have a little bit of a better chance right now, with Marquis Anderson being number one. Primary reason for that is, well, maybe not the primary reason. He definitely has an advantage because he went through spring football, but he also... very talented.
Well, I feel like with him, it's like he's already proved he's really good. Like, I know you haven't played a game yet.
Yeah.
And we see this all the time. Guys will go through spring ball. It doesn't really matter if you go through spring ball if you don't prove anything in spring ball. I think with Marquis, we saw him go through spring ball, and everybody was instantly like, okay, all right, this guy's a hit. Like, you knew he's a 4-star guy, right? You knew he was a highly recruited player, but you're like, okay, that evaluation, whether it's by South Carolina and going after him so hard or the recruiting industry and putting him as a 4-star, top 300 guy in the country, both of those evals were hits there. So, very interesting to see how he continues to work his way into the mix. A couple of forgotten guys maybe I want to make sure we mention. John Darius Morgan is still in the mix. I know, Chris, he was out there in one of those sort of second team configurations. He actually played quite a bit in the spring game when the O-line was split into two, obviously, and there were some injuries, but working his way into the mix, has been on campus for a few years now. I wouldn't completely don't just forget about him because there's some highly rated guys in there. And then Ryan Brubaker missed practice today, had a pretty sizable big old brace on his knee/leg. And Grayson Maines working with at center behind Vershawn Lee. So that's sort of, Grayson played a little bit of all over, I think, in the spring. So I think there is a battle there for who's the backup center, and is the backup center really the backup center, or is the backup center Gargiulo?
Yeah.
And then somebody slides up into his spot. That honestly, if you're going to handicap it, that's probably where I go with that, but we'll see. There's a full month of camp ahead.
Yeah, that was actually, I don't know, maybe you'd say like a mild surprise. I knew Maines was working at center, but he was the second team guy, and even in those couple different configurations we saw, he was a center in both of them. So I tend to think Maines hasn't played really. I can't remember, Wes, did he get a little bit of action last year? I know Casey Henry did, but he has not played a lot of ball. He's still a young player and a player with upside. But I tend to think at a key position like center in a game situation, if for some reason Vershawn Lee isn't in at center, I'm thinking probably Nick Gargiulo there. One more note, too. Now, I'm taking us off of offensive line, but I want to make sure that this was my other observation because I turned to you, Wes, and said this during practice. It was it was phrased as a question.
Do you want to tease? Is there a way to tease this to the break?
Yeah, sure, do that.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Tease it.
So I'm gonna pose my question about South Carolina's linebacking core coming into the 2023 season.
All right, we'll talk about those linebackers coming up next as we continue with camp observations on. You have something to say, Wes?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
I was just firing up my Firehouse Subs read that I'm about to do.
I got you. We'll hit that right now on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
All right, guys, I got an alert on my phone, and you know what it said? It said, Wes, order the pepperoni pizza meatball sub, because if you do it in the app right now, it's only $6, which, inflation and everything, that is a great price. You can't get anything for $6, but you can get this sub on the app for $6. Guys, yesterday, we had USC Media Day. That was fun, but it was about 2 hours worth of time plus travel. Then I had a kickball game that I had to get in. So you know what I had to do, man? I had to hit the rapid rescue and had to get my dinner quickly and efficiently. So I went to the Garners Ferry Firehouse Subs. I had thrown it in there on the app. Got me a New York steamer. Got me a Harvest Cheddar Sun Chip side. And you know what? I was on my way. And I'm a guy who's not on time all the time, but I was on time because I hit that rapid rescue. So you can do the same right now. It's 11:15. It's almost lunchtime. Hit the rapid rescue, and right now, $6, pepperoni pizza meatball sub, Firehouse Subs. Get it right now.
All right, we'll address Chris's question on linebackers coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
How would you like season tickets to all Gamecocks football games, baseball games, men's and women's basketball games? Well, now you can.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
Is it weird having a million things to talk about and the only thing he wanted to talk about is Bravo?
Yes, and it's always weird. It's like when I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and thought that this was my chance to make a change, and they were like, well, enough about change. Scandal. And then I have so many questions for Howie that had nothing to do, and he was like, so scandal.
Give Them Lala, wherever you listen.
Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you. Recapping what Wes and Chris saw this morning out at day one of preseason camp for the Gamecocks. And Chris has a pressing question about linebackers.
What I turned around and asked Wes during, probably right in the middle of practice number one was, is this the best looking linebacker room that we've seen at South Carolina since we've been covering the program? In recent memory, past few years, like however you want to classify that. I tend to go pretty far back. I think the first, Wes, we were pretty close on our timeline. What, probably 2009 is probably like the first season.
I don't want to talk about it.
It's not that long ago.
It's kind of a long time ago.
Long time ago, but it's not that bad. I mean, we're not like, oh yeah, the first season I covered 1975, but I think it is. This group, and that doesn't mean, what I did not say is this is the best group. This group is going to be outstanding this year. There is, I think, a good bit of potential and upside, more than we've seen in quite a while. But I do think I could make that leap. This is the best looking group. Because you look at, start with the freshmen. Pup Howard, he's 6'4", 241.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like an edge guy. So he's an off-the-bus guy. Bam Martin-Scott listed at 6'2" doesn't make sense to me. He seems taller than that, I think, because he's so long-limbed.
He's very long.
His arms, so long. He's a really good-looking guy. You got Mo Kaba, who is a physically impressive guy. Even Jaron Willis, who's a transfer from Ole Miss, he may not play a ton this year in year one, but he's a good-looking kid. Debo Williams, a small, shorter in terms of linebacker, but he's a physically impressive guy. Stone Blanton, right? Colin Bryant is a walk-on from Alabama. He's an impressive guy from what we've heard, in workouts and just eye test. He may be a special teams guy for South Carolina. I think this is a really good looking group. I think, I remember the late Brad Lawing, talking about when he first got back to South Carolina for his second stint under Steve Spurrier, he talked about changing the DNA of the defensive line. And you could see that, right? There were some good players on the roster when he got here, when Ellis Johnson stepped in 2008. But they started recruiting guys like, Cliff Matthews and Travian Robertson and Melvin Ingram. Jadeveon Clowney, of course, is a great example. And they changed the look of that room and the talent level. And I think they're now in position where they've upgraded the talent and they've just upgraded the DNA of this room. This is a bunch of guys that look like SEC linebackers to me.
Yeah, so I think you look at that spot and now it's just, can you go out there and do it? Can you translate that to the field? And I think you listen to Clayton White talk about that position. He almost sounds borderline giddy about that group compared. I think it is compared to what it was when he arrived. And it's nothing against those guys at all, man. But you look at, they're moving guys around just to kind of fill out that position. You look at Brad Johnson. He was a buck.
Yeah.
Under Muschamp.
Yeah.
And they said, look, we need you to go play true linebacker. And, by the end of his career, Sherrod Green had dealt with so many injuries. Yep. And obviously, Mo Kaba is going to be coming off an injury. So that's going to, a big determining factor in that room is going to be, can he get back close to 100%? And I think that, for them, what does that linebacker group look like with Mo? What does it look like if Mo is not quite 100%? Is, to me, maybe the deciding factor between just how good that group could be. And so I'm with you. I think they do look really good physically. I don't know if I'm ready to quite say the best looking physically in the last 10 years, but I'm not willing to say they're not either, if that makes sense.
You're not saying it?
Yes.
Well,
but you are saying.
Again, like Sky Moore was not the best looking linebacker. Getting off the bus, you wouldn't be like, wow. He was kind of undersized, but man, he was really good.
Was a stud.
He was insanely good at pass coverage. He could take on Todd Gurley in the hole and win that battle.
Yeah. See, I think you look at Ernest Jones, though, he looked pretty darn good.
He looked really good.
TJ Brunson looked the part physically.
But I think from a depth standpoint, I'm not even the guys we're talking about all are starters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about when you go down to who's number 2, who's number 3. I do feel like you have more athletic depth this year, which is a key because to your point about Kaba, yes, South Carolina's defense will be at its peak version if he is healthy, back to form, and playing as well as he can. That they need that Mo Kaba, and I think, frankly, they need that Mo Kaba to be a starter to be able to kind of Shane Beamer talks all the time about maximizing the football team, maximizing your talent. I think you need a healthy, effective Mo Kaba in order to do that because when he is healthy, I do think he's one of the most talented guys on this defense, and we were starting to see that with the offseason he had last year. We didn't get to see it during the year, though, right? He was stepping into that starring role and got injured against Arkansas. We didn't see it. But I also think this isn't a position from a depth standpoint anymore where you look at it and go, okay, if Mo Kaba is not a starter or not all the way back to form, it's kind of everything's blown up, right? Because you have some other guys that have played some football and have some talent. You do have a little bit more depth this year. There have been times in the past at linebacker where you felt like last year, you felt like if Brad can't play or Sherrod can't play, kind of what are they going to do? Because then you're relying on, Stone Blanton was a first-year guy. Mm-hmm. He played some. That was fine. You didn't need him to be a starter. Debo Williams was a transfer. You didn't need him, and a young player at that. You didn't need him or want him to be a starter last year. So now those guys are a year older. They'll probably be key reserves, it looks like, this year. And you've got a freshman in Pup Howard who is one of the top linebacker prospects in the country, to add to that mix too.
Yeah, and you really sort of knocked into your depth very early last year in week 2.
Yeah.
Because I think if we're looking at it this time last year, eventually as the year went on, or as the camp went on, we're sitting there saying, well, they're building depth now because Shirai Green is a backup. He went into the season backing up Mo Kaba. And so I think they were on the sort of precipice there of being able to feel like they were building depth. And then you get the big key injury there to Kaba. And, I think that obviously really affected what they were able to do defensively because I think he was going to be their leading tackler. I think he was going to have that type of year for them. And they clearly missed him. So we'll see where that goes. But when we get back on the other side, there's a couple of big picture notes that we haven't touched on yet today at all that I want to hit. One involves Kaba, but one also involves that edge position. And we'll kind of tie all this together, but a couple of big things that we were looking for coming in and kind of answered a couple of questions there, too, that we can hit on the other side.
We'll hit on that and hear some sound from what the players and coaches had to say yesterday at their media availability ahead of camp. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Last break, Wes gave the people listening some tips on how to get yourself some lunch from Firehouse Subs, how to do it effectively, right? By saving yourself some money, saving yourself some time, and getting a great product. I have another product where you can get the best possible product, best possible price, do it efficiently, do it effectively, and do it with a great team. And that is with my friend Amy Mason Cup. Amy Mason Cup State Farm. If you're looking to switch and save on your insurance, I highly recommend calling Amy Mason Cup State Farm. Her team is experienced, knowledgeable, responsive, very helpful, and they can help you with all sorts of insurance policies, everything from home, auto, business, boat, renter's life, and much more, whatever your needs are. She and State Farm have you covered. Amy Mason Cup is a South Carolina native and a local agent. Let her and her team give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you save. You can also, we were talking about the Firehouse Subs app earlier, you can ask her about the Drive Safe and Save app. With State Farm, has dynamic new features like interactive maps and driving tips, helps you save up to 30%. Give her a call, 803-772-5554. Ask her about switching and saving. Ask her about the Drive Safe and Save app. If you'd like to go pay her a visit, her office is pretty close here to the studios, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia. That's Ashland Park Plaza, just off the St. Andrews Road exit on I-26. 803-772-5554. AmyMasonCup.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
More on Camp Day 1 coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
It was hopefully gnarlier and nastier. Every year you want what your team needs, and you want every year to, the summer to be tough because that's when you come close as a team and leadership shows and things like that as well. But it was gnarly and nasty because, one, it was needed just from a mental and physical. You see it, toughness over there is hang on the wall is a core value of this program. We needed to continue to create and instill that toughness. We needed to figure out, who can we count on and maybe who's not quite there yet. That's part of it. And then it's because it helped us get better as well. There were some really profound, deep, impactful moments that happened out there on that field in the summer, and where we got closer and more connected as a team because of it. But it was gnarly and nasty for all those reasons, plus the way they worked. It all led to us getting stronger and faster and more explosive. And now we got to continue to progress and get better on the football field here in practice these next few weeks.
Welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. That was Coach Beamer yesterday talking to the media about a gnarly and nasty summer that the players went through in anticipation for camp, and hopefully has them ready to go for what this next month's going to be leading up to the season.
Yeah, so one question we had that we got answered, but we haven't even talked about it yet. We did talk about it a little bit a second ago with Mo Kaba, but we didn't know what, quote, limited to start camp, end quote, would look like. Sometimes that means you're very limited. Sometimes that means you're out there, but only able to do certain drills. So interesting. Jordan Strong and Mo Kaba both out there today, both dressed, both going through at least part of the workout. They were not over on the sideline. And so Strong even went as far as when they were doing the sort of team lineup drill where they're just trying to get guys lined up quickly and flow to the football. Strong was on the field with that group.
I was going to say, Colin did mention he was moving better than he thought he was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, he was moving around. He was braced up, as you would expect. I don't think he's 100% yet in terms of being what he was before, but he's working to get back towards that. So he was back out there. Kaba was out there as well, but was not working in with the linebackers when they did that team drill. So I don't know if you should read into that or not, but that's a fact. He was not out there during the little get lined up drill we saw. Strong was. Tyreek Johnson was actually in a blue jersey, which sort of means, hey, don't hit me. And but this is something we have not hit on that I think maybe needs to be discussed. If you listen to Shane Beamer yesterday, he had some really high praise for the offseason that Tyreek Johnson has had. And Tyreek was actually working with the ones at that edge spot. So that's a case of a veteran coming in and continue to push for more playing time. They had JT Gear, who is the transfer from Syracuse, coming back home. He was working with the twos at the edge spot, but could be a good sign for that group that Tyreek has continued to come on. Sometimes you wonder later in a guy's career, is he kind of maxed out on what he's going to be? But it sounds like they're pretty happy with the job Tyreek has done this offseason.
Could Tyreek be kind of an MJ Webb type player? Remember, MJ at defensive tackle was a 6-year player, and I don't know if people really thought about him a lot, but he played. He played some during his career. I think the last season he was at Carolina at defensive tackle, he ended up playing. He had his biggest impact. Not a huge impact, but he was a depth player. Maybe Tyreek can be similar to that at edge, which is a need spot or more. He's had a really interesting / unfortunate career. Remember when he first got to Carolina, lower ranked player out of Lakewood High School. So this is all the way back in 2018. But even as a freshman, I specifically remember watching practice and seeing his technique and seeing the way, he was being coached. That was under the previous staff, of course. But it seems like there were some things to like there. But then he had the ACL injury year 1. Year 2, he had the sublux kneecap, which is like the Ortre Smith injury that was so bad. So, then the next year's the COVID year. He missed the spring coming back from the sublux kneecap. So really the last 2 seasons are the only ones where he's been decently healthy or not coming off an injury. And I think even in there's been some smaller things. So if this is a thing, I think that would be pretty significant. Not to raise expectations too high, but if he can be a depth guy and give you some quality snaps, that's good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he quietly played 167 snaps on defense last year. Yeah. So he was a key reserve player. Does that go up? Does that go up to 200 snaps this year, 250 snaps this year? I don't know what's realistic. Played in 11 games. So he's playing. That put him right at, he's playing about 15 snaps a game, give or take, which, I think was a good number for him. Can he get to the point where he can do a bit more than that? It also, it serves for one as depth, whether he's starting or whether he's a number 2 guy. You always want guys you can trust. And it serves to kind of push JT Gear, too, as the new guy. Not saying in any way that he has to be pushed or anything like that, but you always want for that competition to be in play. And, guys generally perform better when they're being pushed. And so this served as a way to where Gear didn't just enter the program, hey, man, here's number 1 spot, silver platter, it's yours. It's more like, all right, there's a veteran ahead of you. Come in, earn this spot. And, I really like what I've seen. Emphasis on seen, like we haven't seen him go make plays on the quarterback in practice, but I like the look of Gear. Physically, he looks the part, seems to have a really good head on his shoulders, and seems to be motivated to come in here and play a bunch. So the edge spot, a question mark in some ways, but also you're already starting to kind of see some answers there too.
Elsewhere on the defense, got some confirmation of where some guys are going to be in the secondary. Bakari Swain working out with the cornerbacks, and Jalen Kilgore is looking to be a safety.
Yeah, that's kind of what we expected there. I did think it was interesting. Torian Gray said, do not completely read into the fact that DQ Smith played safety pretty much all spring. He said they still see him as, hey, you're a safety / nickel. Like, don't completely forget about the fact he can go and play nickel if you need him to. They want the best 5 on the field. So what does that look like? Right now, we wondered, we assumed, we guessed Spalding would be up first with the nickels. That was the case today. So it was really the 5 that we would have projected. That's Dial, OD at corner. That's Nick E, DQ Smith at safety, and then Spalding, first man up at nickelback. But if a guy like Jalen Kilgore were to push really hard for a starting spot at safety, could you slide DQ over to nickel? Oh, absolutely you could. So I think there are some things to watch there. At cornerback, I thought Beamer was very open and honest about it. He didn't give the eye. Everybody's working. Everybody's trying to play. Everybody's competing. Right now, Dial and OD are your starters. They are very interested to see, I think Torian said it like this, who can shake loose among that bunch behind them, because you have you have some talented guys, but you just have, I want to say almost no experience behind them at corner. So who shakes loose there? Ultimately, I think Bakari Swain is the guy you look at and say, upside-wise, he's the guy who could maybe be your quote, third corner, next man up.
And that's a key spot. Like, Marcellus Dial played that role last year, and he played a bunch. And then at the end of the year, look at the Clemson game. Like, he ended up playing a key role in that game in particular. I think, Wes, to the experience point, the guy, probably the only guy you could point to there is probably Kwan Banks, who played as a true freshman, and he could really play anywhere. Aside from that, you got, Emory Floyd can really run. He's a track guy, too. He's got a lot of talent. Swain has a lot of talent, but he's a true freshman. Summer enrollee. So someone, well, as Torian Gray said, shake loose, shake free.
I kind of like that phrasing.
Yeah. You put them all in, you mix them all up, and somebody comes out.
Shake loose.
But it's an important storyline. Finding, is there a shift to the best 5 at some point during camp or even the season? And then kind of who is that third corner? Those are 2 secondary storylines, I think.
Yeah, have we talked about Marcellus Dial enough for what's going to be expected of him? And this guy started to get some preseason love, too, on kind of a national level as well. I think people forget how much he played last year.
Yeah.
And, dude, he actually was a starter for a good portion of the year, because, when they first opened up last year, they had Cam starting at nickel, and Marcellus was a starter opposite Darius Rush at corner. So I think we forget this guy does have starting experience, but now he's going to be expected to go in there and be your guy, be kind of your quote lockdown corner on one side. So I think the staff internally feels very good about him doing that, but I'm kind of curious to see what are the can you properly expect him to be a Cam Smith or a Darius Rush for you this year, or is the expectation a little bit below that? I think that'll be intriguing to see.
All right, we'll come back on the other side, let you listen to some more audio from yesterday as we wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Guys, we tell you about upgrading your man cave all the time, and there's some special ways for you to upgrade that man cave. Maybe you want to hang an autographed, photo. Maybe you want to hang a jersey. Maybe you want to hang an autographed jersey. Our friends at Goal Line Framing in West Columbia, they can help you with that or really any and all of your custom framing needs. That could be a diploma. That could be original artwork. That could be a canvas. That could be a flag. Or, like I said, a jersey. They've been in business for over 20 years. Head on over to 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, they've got an art gallery, some home decor, furniture, and, of course, guest items right there in store. If you got questions, just give them a call, 803-739-1337. They are open today because they're open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Also open on Saturday. That's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can give them a follow on Goal Line Framing SC on Instagram. That's at Goal Line Framing SC on Instagram. They're constantly posting videos and reels and snippets of some of their in-store stuff. So, again, that's Goal Line Framing in West Columbia. Give owner Kendall Walsh and manager Joni James a call. They're going to take care of you, again, any and all your custom framing needs.
All right, we'll wrap up today's show on the other side. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
I think it goes down to I'm challenging myself just to be healthy. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the biggest thing. Not even the position thing doesn't even really matter to me, but me being available for my team, me having a full season with no injuries, is me being available for my team. Because whenever I'm available and I'm healthy, I'm the best version of my team. I'm the best version of myself, and my team is better.
Welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris, a couple more minutes ago, wrapping things up before we hand it off to Jay. For the halftime show, that was the voice of DeCarrion Joyner talking about the challenges of becoming a running back. And as expected, he was getting the reps with the ones today at that running back position. Did get a little bit of insight into the running back room yesterday from Shane Beamer as Cam Sandlin has moved over from the tight end position to be another body in that running back room, a guy that played quarterback in high school, very similar skill set to what DeCarrion Joyner brings the position. And as I was talking to Colin about this earlier, kind of a no-lose situation. You have good depth at tight end. There's nothing wrong with moving him over and seeing if he can be something as a running back.
Yeah, if y'all had been reading Chris Clark stuff on Gamecock Central, you would have known that months ago. And I think that makes a ton of sense, honestly. And, he's one of the guys that's coming off a little bit of a, injury as well. But I actually think if push came to shove, Sandlin could probably help you there, man. Like, he's got a lot of the traits you're looking for. Just a tough dude, tough-nosed. Played high school quarterback where, he kind of did a little bit of everything for his team. So that move makes a ton of sense. That position, all of a sudden, I don't want to say they have a Marcus Lattimore in the room, like a...
Confirm.
Yeah, they don't have a... I was looking on the graphics on the indoor yesterday. Marcus, freshman, All-American. Yep. I think SEC Freshman of the Year. Obviously a stud. There's not that guy in the room, but I think you feel somewhat better about that position. And Mike Uva, happy birthday to Mike. He was tweeting saying, hey guys, you don't read into anything on the day one depth chart, but DeCarrion was working with the ones. And my only thing I would argue there is, yes, you absolutely can read into that DeCarrion is with the ones because Dow Loggins yesterday said, look, this guy went from playing wide receiver, from being a high school quarterback to being an SEC starter at running back. So if DeCarrion is healthy, he's going to be starting game one in Charlotte. I think that's pretty locked in.
Dow Loggins, he said some other strong things yesterday about Joyner. He's the one. He's the guy. He went pretty strong on it. And so it was funny because Loggins has been even stronger on that than Monterio Hardesty has, right? Hardesty still, he's like, you're messing up my room, Like, he didn't say that, by the way. I'm not trying to create a rift between those coaches by what they hear on the radio.
He's giving you a little more of the coach speak.
He's giving a little bit more.
Everybody's competing.
Competing. No starter. But DeCarrion is. I do think that was meaningful And I would not be surprised if that holds. Now, you would feel better, continue to take the preseason to progress, bring along Braswell. Cam Sandlin still had a knee brace on today. Add him for depth. I agree, Wes. Has some traits. He could help.
Yeah. Watch out for Braswell, though. That's the guy to...
Yeah, that's the guy to watch.
But we got to go stronger than... I wouldn't be surprised if that holds. Joyner is starting game one.
Yeah, I think it holds. I do.
No, Joyner is starting game one. Right? I mean...
Well, I said I think. Because I do think that. I can't guarantee it. I think that.
But if the offensive coordinator says he's gone from being a wide receiver, paraphrasing here, to being an SEC starter at running back, the head coach is saying this guy is a leader, if not the leader of our football team. There's no way they are running out there game one, snap one, without number 5 on the field, in the backfield at running back.
Yeah.
Like, if you can lock in, other than that 7 is the first quarterback to take a snap, I don't know if there's a bigger lock on this team now, which is funny because a couple months ago we were talking about, is he a receiver or a running back on the roster? And now he's a lock to start at running. He's the second biggest lock on this team, in my opinion, to start game one in Charlotte.
That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Jay coming up next on 107.5 The Game.